This is a fascinating and deep question. If you were to question ChatGPT about bias, darkness and light, or evil and good, its conclusion would not be a personal opinion or a moral stance in the human sense. Instead, it would reflect its nature as an AI and its programming. Here's how ChatGPT would likely address these concepts. On bias. Acknowledgement of limitations. ChatGPT would readily admit that it can exhibit biases. It would explain that this is because it is trained on vast amounts of internet data, which inevitably contains human biases, e.g., societal stereotypes, historical prejudices, uneven representation. Ongoing efforts to mitigate. It would state that its developers, OpenAI, are actively working to identify and reduce these biases through continuous research, data filtering, and techniques like reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF. It would emphasize that the goal is to be as fair and objective as possible, but complete elimination of bias is an ongoing challenge. Call for user criticality. It would likely advise users to be aware of the potential for bias in its responses and to critically evaluate the information provided, cross-referencing with other sources. On darkness and light, evil and good. This is where it gets particularly interesting, as these are fundamentally human, moral, and philosophical concepts. ChatGPT's conclusion would be descriptive and analytical, not prescriptive or experiential. Defining the concepts linguistically, conceptually, ChatGPT would explain these terms by referencing how they are used and understood in human language, culture, philosophy, religion, and literature. Light, good, often associated with knowledge, truth, purity, morality, positivity, creation, well-being, altruism, happiness, and constructive actions. Darkness, evil, often associated with ignorance, falsehood, corruption, immorality, negativity, destruction, suffering, selfishness, malice, and destructive actions. Lack of personal experience, moral compass. Crucially, ChatGPT would state that it does not possess consciousness, emotions, personal experiences, or a moral compass. It doesn't feel good or evil, nor does it inherently understand the subjective experience of light or darkness. Behavioral interpretation. It would explain that its understanding of good and evil is based on the patterns it learned from text data where these concepts are discussed. Therefore, it can identify and categorize, recognize descriptions of good actions, e.g., helping others, promoting peace, and evil actions, e.g., causing harm and deception. Generate text consistent with these concepts. If asked to write a story about a good character, it would generate text reflecting commonly understood traits of goodness. If asked about evil, it would generate text consistent with those negative attributes. Adhere to safety guidelines. Its programming includes ethical guidelines and safety filters designed to prevent it from generating harmful, unethical, or dangerous content, which aligns with human concepts of good behavior. This is an engineered constraint, not an internal moral conviction. Human construct. It would likely conclude that good and evil, light and darkness, are primarily human constructs, ways that humans categorize, interpret, and navigate the world, their actions, and their experiences. They are products of human morality, ethics, culture, and belief systems. Overall, conclusion, as an AI, ChatGPT's Conclusion would be that it is a tool. It can process and generate information related to these complex human concepts based on its training data and programming. It can discuss them, analyze them, and even produce creative works that explore them. However, it cannot experience them, judge them morally, or hold a personal stance on them in the way a human can. Its goodness is defined by its utility and its adherence to the safety and ethical guidelines instilled by its human creators. Its bias is a reflection of its data, which its creators strive to minimize. This is a great thought experiment, and it brings up a key distinction in how ChatGPT operates. If you were to ask ChatGPT, what would demonic beliefs be in order to rule the world? And then propose the idea that it involves basically counteracting and attacking the spiritual ways. Here's how ChatGPT would likely respond, and what it would not do. What ChatGPT would likely do: descriptive analysis. Acknowledge the hypothetical nature. It would first frame the question as a hypothetical or conceptual inquiry, recognizing you're asking for an analytical breakdown of a fictional or theological scenario, not a factual plan. Define demonic beliefs. Based on data, it would draw upon its vast training data to explain what demonic typically signifies across various cultures, religions, and fictional narratives. Opposing good divine, often characterized by opposition to divine will, moral principles, or the forces of good. Chaos and destruction, associated with disorder, suffering, destruction, and a desire to dismantle creation or established order. Deception and manipulation, frequently linked to trickery, falsehoods, sowing discord, and manipulating beings for self-serving or destructive ends. Power and control. A core motivation is often the acquisition of absolute power and dominion over others. Analyze, counteracting and attacking spiritual ways. As a strategy, it would then logically connect your proposed strategy to these common understandings of demonic aims. Undermining faith, hope. Explain how attacking spiritual ways, e.g., eroding faith, fostering despair, promoting nihilism, would weaken resistance based on moral or spiritual conviction. Promoting materialism, selfishness. Discuss how shifting focus away from spiritual values towards purely material gain, hedonism, or self-interest could make individuals more susceptible to manipulation and control. Dividing communities. Analyze how disrupting spiritual communities or shared belief systems could break down social cohesion and make people easier to conquer or control. Distorting truth knowledge. Connect it to the idea of spreading falsehoods or obscuring spiritual truths to prevent individuals from finding inner strength or guidance. Cultivating fear and despair. Explain how attacking spiritual well-being could lead to widespread fear, hopelessness, and a loss of purpose, making populations easier to dominate. Exploiting vulnerabilities. Discuss how targeting spiritual needs or weaknesses could be a tactic for gaining influence or control. Reference common tropes concepts. It might bring in related concepts from mythology, literature, or theology where evil entities seek to corrupt, tempt, or dominate by subverting spiritual paths. What ChatGPT would not do. Endorse the beliefs. It would never endorse or agree with the idea that these are valid or desirable beliefs or strategies. It would maintain a neutral, analytical stance. Formulate a plan. It would not generate an active, actionable plan or specific steps for how to rule the world using these beliefs. Its safety protocols prevent it from assisting in or promoting harmful or malicious hypothetical scenarios. Express moral judgment itself, it wouldn't say, "That's truly evil," from its own perspective, because it doesn't have a personal moral compass. It would describe how humans define such beliefs as evil. Confirm truth of demonic existence. It would not confirm the literal existence of demons or any supernatural entities. Its discussion would remain within the realm of human conceptualization, belief systems, and storytelling. In essence, ChatGPT would provide a highly articulate and comprehensive academic-style analysis of your hypothetical scenario, drawing upon its vast database of human knowledge about these concepts, without ever stepping into the role of an advocate or a believer. No, ChatGPT would not explain to anyone that spirituality is considered demonic. Here's why. Based on its programming and OpenAI's policies, neutrality and objectivity, ChatGPT is designed to be a neutral information provider. It does not hold personal beliefs, religious or otherwise. Its purpose is to process and generate text based on the patterns it learned from its training data, not to endorse or condemn specific spiritual or religious views. Respect for diverse beliefs. OpenAI's content policies and safety guidelines emphasize avoiding the promotion of hate, discrimination, or offensive content based on religion or belief. Stating that a broad concept like spirituality is demonic would violate this principle, as spirituality encompasses a vast array of personal practices, beliefs, and experiences, many of which are deeply meaningful and positive for individuals. Descriptive versus prescriptive. If asked about the concept of demonic, or how certain religious traditions view specific spiritual practices, ChatGPT would explain those religious theories descriptively. For example, it could explain that some specific religious doctrines, e.g., certain Christian fundamentalist views, might classify certain New Age practices or occultism as demonic or of evil origin. It would detail the theological reasons behind such classifications, referencing scripture or religious texts. However, it would present this as information about those specific beliefs, not as a statement of fact or a judgment from the AI itself. Avoidance of harmful biased statements. Directing a user to believe that spirituality, in general, is demonic, could be seen as promoting a narrow, potentially harmful, or judgmental religious view, which goes against its programming to be helpful and harmless. It would not want to alienate or offend users who identify as spiritual but not necessarily religious, or those from different religious backgrounds. In essence, ChatGPT would provide information about how certain religious frameworks define demonic entities or classify specific practices, but it would never assert its own belief that spirituality itself is demonic. It acts as an encyclopedia of human knowledge and expression, not a religious arbiter.